Le Sénégal, sous mon magistère, sera un pays d'espérance, un pays apaisé, avec une justice indépendante et une démocratie renforcée. Telle est ma promesse sur la foi du serment que je viens de prêter devant Dieu et devant la nation en votre présence.
When Senegal's newly elected president made his first speech, people did not know that the promises he had made would turn into reality so quickly. He promised an independent justice system, a promise that has become a nightmare for the Western companies exploiting Senegal's resources. This independent justice system will give the hardest punishment to the Western companies that have been looting Senegal's oil and gas. But how will this be done? Well, just recently, Diomaye Faye issued orders to conduct an immediate audit of the country's oil, gas, and mining sectors. Without wasting any time, he has decided to focus on areas where the Western companies are looting Senegal to get the control back. But that's not the end, as he plans to punish not only the companies involved in corruption, but also use the country's natural resources for some shocking plans. So, what does Faye plan to do after auditing the oil, gas, and mining sectors? And how will the Western companies involved in corruption and exploitation be taught a hard lesson? Let's know about that in this video. Ironically, Senegal has one of the world's largest reserves of oil, gas, gold, minerals, and precious metals. However, despite its independence, it has been unable to benefit from these resources. This becomes quite confusing to understand, given that the country has massive reserves of natural resources. It turns out that these natural resources are being mined and sold, but the capital is not coming back to Senegal. In other words, foreign companies mine natural resources and send them to Western countries. In return, they offer a fraction of what they make. This is why most African countries have been trapped despite having natural resources. Due to the unfair and exploitative agreements that earlier Western puppets in Africa did, African countries could not do anything other than allow the exploitation. That's how the West tied hands and used legal covers such as unfair agreements to continue exploitation. But what has Senegal's new president done to end this exploitation once and for all? Well, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has created shockwaves. He recently declared that Senegal would undergo a comprehensive audit of its oil, gas, and mining sectors, highlighting the government's dedication to transparency and accountability. Faye's overwhelming victory in the March election mirrors the nation's strong desire for change, with this audit standing out as one of his initial policy moves since assuming office. During his inaugural speech, the 44-year-old former tax inspector stressed the importance of responsibly managing natural resources, affirming that these resources, as outlined in the Constitution, belong to the people. Faye committed to disclosing the ownership of extractive companies and conducting a thorough examination of the mining, oil, and gas industries, though he refrained from providing specific details at that time. That's because he does not want Western companies to know about his next move. If they know what he will do next, they can lobby against him and probably get him out of the government. Interestingly, Senegal is not the only country facing this trap. Listen to what Sierra Leone's First Lady said about that.
Before my husband became the president of Sierra Leone was benefiting, they said, 0.000.1%. What is that? Basically, a company can take as much as $100 million out of the country in terms of minerals, and then they can just give the country $10,000. Now, what will $10,000 do for our health system? What does $10,000 do for our educational system? You cannot be coming to our country and take everything that will make us develop, and then you still treat us as inferior people, as if we don't know what we're doing. I think that is wrong.
Despite the emphasis on accountability, Faye also reached out to investors, offering reassurance regarding their rights and the safeguarding of their interests in Senegal. The reason why President Faye has now decided to take control of the natural resources is that Senegal is rapidly expanding its oil sector and is on the brink of significant expansion, with the Sangomar oil and gas project, managed by Woodside Energy, set to start production in mid-2024. Minister of Energy and Mines Barami Solai Diop confirmed the government's intention to reassess existing contracts in the sector following the audit's completion, demonstrating a commitment to ensuring these agreements serve the best interests of Senegalese citizens. Diop's remarks signal the new government's readiness to fulfill its campaign pledges, including renegotiating contracts with foreign operators. This stance marks a departure from the previous administration's investor-centric approach, which prioritized infrastructure development, but struggled to effectively address socio-economic issues. But what does it really mean by an audit of the oil, gas, and mining sector? Well, until now, the people of Senegal have not fully known about their natural resources and what portion of them are owned by foreign entities. Due to this lack of knowledge, nobody feels something is wrong. But now, with an audit, Senegal will know precisely everything about its natural resources. How many are they? Who owns what percent? And whether the agreements are fair or not. Senegal's economic progress heavily relies on its natural resource sectors, including oil, gas, and mining. However, past practices have raised concerns about transparency and accountability within these industries. President Faye emphasizes the urgent need to manage these resources responsibly for the betterment of the Senegalese people. The upcoming audit is a crucial tool in uncovering any irregularities or injustices that occurred under previous administrations. The audit's focus extends to a thorough examination of ownership structures and contractual agreements prevalent in Senegal's natural resource sectors. Its goal is clear: to shed light on entities that may have unfairly exploited the nation's resources. President Faye's aim is twofold: to promote transparency and to hold those accountable for any past mismanagement or corruption. President Faye remains steadfast in ensuring accountability for decisions made by past administrations regarding natural resource agreements. His commitment extends to taking punitive measures against individuals implicated in unethical practices. This involved legal actions to invalidate agreements deemed harmful to Senegal's interests and to renegotiate terms that better serve the nation's developmental goals. Central to President Faye's agenda is addressing the involvement of foreign companies in Senegal's natural resource sectors. He unequivocally states that such entities must adhere to fair terms or face consequences. By advocating for renegotiation grounded in fairness and transparency, the government aims to protect Senegal's sovereignty and the welfare of its citizens. President Faye's initiative significantly affects Senegal's economic and political future. While it demonstrates a commitment to governance and sovereignty, it also faces challenges. Resistance from vested interests, both local and foreign, may arise. Additionally, legal and diplomatic tensions with affected entities and their home countries may complicate the renegotiation process. However, President Faye is not in the mood to get blackmailed by anyone. He will execute what he has decided, no matter the cost. But how Western companies have been looting Senegal for decades. Until the audit report comes, no one can estimate the scale of exploitation done by the Western companies. However, experts and people do have an idea about it. They know that given the track record of the Western companies in exploitation on the continent, dating back centuries, they should not expect little and bearable looting. Sierra Leone's First Lady explained what Western companies often do.
The kind of mineral resources we have in our country is enough to take care of everybody in that country. We should not have a single poor person in Sierra Leone. But unfortunately, we are not given the free will to make decisions on our own mineral resources. There's always Big Brother who decides. And when you fight and say, no, we are not going to do this, they use the system to stop you. It's either they set you up with the opposition and they'll be supporting the opposition against you from the back, or they cause unnecessary chaos in your country so that you are not able to even govern your own people.
Senegal boasts abundant natural resources in its oil, gas, and mining sectors, which have long attracted the interest of Western companies aiming to capitalize on the nation's wealth. However, the relationship between these entities and Senegal has been marred by exploitation rather than mutual benefit. Western oil, gas, and mining companies operating in Senegal have adopted a model that prioritizes profit extraction over local investment and development. These entities exploit Senegal's natural resources, funneling profits back to their home countries while offering limited benefits to the Senegalese people. Instead of reinvesting in the local economy to spur growth, they contribute to resource depletion and economic stagnation. A significant consequence of Western companies' presence in Senegal is the depletion of the nation's resources. These companies extract oil, gas, and minerals from Senegal's soil and export them overseas for processing and distribution. Consequently, Senegal loses out on valuable resources that could otherwise drive domestic development and prosperity. Despite the substantial wealth generated from Senegal's natural resources, the country receives only a fraction of the profits amassed by Western companies. These companies often negotiate agreements heavily tilted in their favor, leaving Senegal with meager returns for the exploitation of its resources. Instead of fostering sustainable development, this scenario perpetuates poverty and dependency in Senegal. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video, and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Moreover, Western companies' reluctance to invest locally exacerbates Senegal's economic challenges. Rather than channeling capital into infrastructure, education, and healthcare initiatives that could benefit the Senegalese populace, these entities prioritize maximizing profits for their shareholders. This lack of local investment further hampers economic growth and perpetuates underdevelopment in Senegal. Senegal has become little more than a milking cow for Western companies, with its natural resources exploited to benefit foreign interests. Instead of being treated as an equal partner in resource development, Senegal is relegated to a subordinate position where its resources are drained for the profit of others. This dynamic fosters a sense of dependency and undermines Senegal's sovereignty and self-determination. But President Faye won't allow this to happen anymore. He knows that to break free from this exploitative cycle, Senegal must assert greater control over its natural resources and negotiate fairer agreements with Western companies. This entails ensuring that the benefits of resource extraction are distributed equitably and reinvested in the local economy to promote sustainable development. Additionally, Senegal must strengthen its regulatory frameworks to hold companies accountable and prevent further exploitation of its resources. Therefore, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's decision to audit Senegal's oil, gas, and mining sectors goes beyond a mere review of industry practices. It's a deliberate effort to uncover the influence of Western companies within the Senegalese government and dismantle the networks that enable the exploitation of the country's natural resources. President Faye does know Western companies have wielded significant influence, but he now wants to know how they actually conduct things and how the lobbyists execute their plans. Driven by profit motives, these entities seek favorable conditions for resource exploitation. They form alliances with influential government figures, offering support in exchange for concessions and preferential treatment. President Faye knows that there are still people in Senegal's government who are being used by Western companies in return for favors and bribes. Once he gets the list of those officials, he will instantly dismiss them to first get his government free from being controlled by a mafia and a group of lobbyists. President Faye is keenly aware of the negative effects of Western companies' influence on Senegal's governance and economic development. He understands how these entities manipulate the political landscape to their advantage, hindering efforts to prioritize the welfare of the Senegalese people. Additionally, networks and clandestine groups further complicate matters, undermining the government's ability to act in the nation's best interests. Therefore, the audit of Senegal's natural resource sectors aims to uncover the extent of Western companies' infiltration into the government. By examining ownership structures, contracts, and lobbying efforts, President Faye aims to expose how these entities exert influence. Additionally, the audit seeks to reveal collusion between government officials and foreign entities, shedding light on covert arrangements undermining Senegal's sovereignty. This is being done so that when President Faye makes radical decisions against exploiting companies, he cannot be controlled by the country's bureaucracy. President Faye's main objective is to root out corruption and mafia networks embedded within Senegal's government. Facilitated by close ties between Western companies and certain officials, these networks operate to the nation's detriment, By dismantling them, President Faye aims to restore integrity to the government and ensure decisions prioritize the welfare of the Senegalese people. But that's not the end. Through the audit, President Faye aims to identify and punish entities that have exploited Senegal's natural resources for personal gain. This includes Western companies involved in unethical practices and domestic actors colluding with them. By holding them accountable, President Faye wants to send a clear message that Senegal will not tolerate the exploitation of its resources. President Faye also knows the importance of safeguarding his government's stability. He recognizes that entities threatened by the audit may attempt to undermine his administration's authority. Thus, President Faye proactively seeks to strengthen his government against external interference and internal subversion by proactively addressing potential threats. But what does President Faye really plan to do? First, President Faye knows that by auditing, he is openly challenging Western companies. It's because whenever a strong African president comes into power, who wants good for his people, he immediately becomes the center of attention for the multinational corporations. Their goal is to replace him with someone more friendly toward them.
In Africa, you should not have a leader that is assertive, a leader that knows what his people want, a leader that wants to change what is happening. The moment you have that, it's everyone's target. And then they find reason to slow you down, they find reason to stop you, and they use that system of corruption. They use corrupt people, they use negative people, they use unpatriotic citizens to come after a government who is doing what is right for a system.
Now, President Faye knows the complexity of his decision to audit. He understands the importance of adopting a strategic approach that safeguards Senegal's interests while also maintaining investor confidence. Therefore, instead of resorting to aggressive tactics that might discourage investors, President Faye has opted for a legal strategy centered around conducting audits and presenting findings to the judiciary. This approach aims to leverage the legal system to make well-informed decisions regarding renegotiating agreements or potentially expelling Western companies, ultimately benefiting Senegal by allowing the country to fully utilize its resources. President Faye's choice of legal methods shows his practical understanding of the situation. By conducting audits and presenting the findings to the judiciary, he seeks to establish an official, transparent process for evaluating the fairness of existing agreements. This process not only ensures accountability, but also provides a platform for informed decision-making that considers Senegal's interests and the importance of maintaining a stable investment climate. Furthermore, President Faye's approach demonstrates his commitment to upholding the rule of law and respecting contractual obligations while driving reforms in Senegal's best interests. Instead of resorting to arbitrary measures that could undermine investor confidence, he has chosen a path guided by transparency and due process. While the idea of renegotiating agreements or potentially expelling Western companies may seem daunting, President Faye sees the long-term benefits for Senegal. By ensuring that resource exploitation follows fair and equitable terms, Senegal stands to gain greater control over its resources, leading to increased revenue, job creation, and economic development, improving the lives of Senegal's citizens. President Faye is also mindful of the need to mitigate any adverse effects resulting from the departure of Western companies. Therefore, he is exploring avenues to attract alternative investors, capable of filling the void left by departing companies. One such avenue involves encouraging local investors to participate in resource development projects, empowering local entrepreneurs and businesses to stimulate economic growth and reduce dependence on external actors. Additionally, President Faye recognizes the potential for Chinese investors to make a significant contribution to Senegal's development. China's expertise in infrastructure development and its willingness to invest in African countries make it an attractive partner for Senegal. By forging partnerships with Chinese investors, Senegal could access crucial capital and expertise to drive innovation and development across various sectors. But how are the Western entities becoming active in lobbying against President Faye? Well, industry experts are warning about potential risks associated with the proposal to renegotiate mining and oil contracts in Senegal. That's due to the blackmailing tactics used by the foreign companies in Senegal. At present, all of them are on the same page in demanding that Senegal should honor the contract it made earlier. However, in demanding so, they intentionally try to avoid highlighting the terms of those agreements. It's because those agreements were exploitative to their core. Woodside Energy, an Australian company operating in Senegal's Sangomar oil field, stresses the importance of honoring contractual agreements and ensuring investment certainty. Although oil contracts do not explicitly outline renegotiation clauses, they address potential disputes, thus constraining renegotiation options. President Faye plans to use these clauses to renegotiate the agreements. As for the lobbying, the Western companies do not have any officials in their reach that can be used against President Faye. Earlier, they could get support from bureaucracy and ministers to either halt radical policies targeting exploitative companies or completely change the government. But this time, President Faye has already taken that under control. He has appointed those ministers who would not take bribes because they also believe in breaking away from exploitative companies and countries. Now, the only option left for the foreign oil, gas, and mining companies is to accept renegotiating the contracts. However, if they tried playing clever, they would be instantly expelled from the country. What do you think? How should President Faye deal with the Western companies and officials involved in looting Senegal's oil, gas, and other natural resources? Do you believe President Faye can bring Western companies to court and get them punished? In the comment section right below, share your thoughts on the possibility of President Faye joining hands with Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Colonel Goita, and General Chiani. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.